Hello everyone, this is Vinay from Informatica. Today I'll be talking about an approach to retrieve mapping specification log information with the help of data integration service logging. I will discuss about the mapping specification log locations and the formats and how to set the data integration service logging so that we can get more information about the mapping specification logs. And finally, I'll discuss about how to fetch the mapping specification log and debug the issue using the information in the mapping specification log. I'll also show you a demo on using these concepts. The usual location for mapping specification logs is under Tomcat bin dis logs and ms folder. The DIS logs is a configurable option. You can set it to a custom location on the administration console at the data integration service level. The formats usually followed by the mapping specification logs are timestamp followed by mapping followed by the ID that is generated by the data integration service. Or sometimes you can find the mapping specification logs with mapping followed by the ID generated by the data integration service, followed by the timestamp. On the DIS level, to enable the information that will tell you the location of the mapping specification log, you need to set the logging level to trace, and you should recycle the data integration service after setting that logging level. And once you have the trace level on the data integration service, you should be able to see the mapping ID from the data integration service logging. And once you have that ID, you can go to the folder location of the mapping specification log files and then retrieve the corresponding mapping specification log. And with that, you should be able to investigate the root cause for the failing map runs. So let me quickly show you a demo using these concepts. So I will show you the settings that I have made on the data integration service layer. So this is the Informatica Administrator console. And the first setting that I discussed is on the logging options. I have set this to debug level, but trace level should be good enough to retrieve the information about the mapping specification log. And I was also mentioning that, the data integration service log files, the DIS logs folder, it's configurable. So in the logging options, you can set it to a custom location other than the DIS logs, which is the default option out of the box. So once these properties are set, you have to recycle the data integration service. Now let me show you a sample mapping. So here, when I'm running this mapping, I notice that it is writing a flat file to the intended folder location, but the flat file is not containing any data. So this mapping is a simple mapping. It reads the data from a flat file and it uses a Java transformation to process the incoming data. I have a bunch of if-else blocks which perform some operations on the incoming data and thus set the outgoing ports and which will be written to the flat file. And the writer transformation here is supposed to write the data to a temp folder under the C drive. So now let's go ahead and run this mapping. So here I see that the output file is of 0 kilobytes. There is no data being written to this file. But whereas the input file that I'm reading has some data that I'm interested in transforming and writing to. So I need to find the root cause of this problem, which I'll be able to do so using the mapping specification log. So I need to know uh, which of the mapping specification logs would contain the information that I'm looking for. So as I mentioned in the previous slides, out of the box, we place the mapping specification logs under Tomcat, bin, dis logs, and ms folder. And as you can see, there are a whole bunch of mapping specification logs, and we need to figure out which of these logs corresponds to the mapping that we just ran. So we go to the data integration service logging to retrieve that information. So let me navigate to data integration service logs. And in the service, I select data integration service and the service name, and I set the logging level to trace. And when I press the filter, I do see that there is um, some issue while running the mapping. So apparently it seems like there is an issue with running the transformation, which is Java transformation. So I need to identify which mapping log would contain more information about this issue. So in the data integration service log, we can see that um, there's a request that was received at around the time I'm looking for. So I'm setting this option to trace just to filter out the debug information here. So in the data integration service log, you need to look for the line that starts with the transformation machine for the mapping service module is created with the ID followed by the ID name. So this is the ID that corresponds to the name of the mapping specification log. So let's navigate to the mapping specification log, and we can see that there's a log file that was created um, with the same ID that the data integration service is showing. So once you open this, you will see that there's a logging information written from the DTM, and you should be able to debug the issue further by looking at the logging information from here. So as we can see here, it looks like the reader has completed the uh, reading job, and the issue seems to be occurring when the Java transformation is processing the data. So let's go ahead and use a try-catch block to further debug the problem. So I will use a try-catch block around the code that I've written to process the data. And when I catch an exception, I will log this as an error. This should go to the mapping specification log. So now that we wrap the code with try-catch block, let's compile it and run the mapping again. So going back to the temp folder, I do see that the data is getting written now. And when I when I expand the address uh, column, I see that some of the data is missing. So I need to debug why this is happening. So the approach is to go back to the data integration service log again to retrieve the corresponding mapping specification log. So since we are already open the logging tab in the administrator console, let's filter the information. So we can see that um, there is another mapping specification log was created with the ID r_h and followed by a bunch of characters. So we're going to look for that mapping specification log inside the mapping specification logs folder. So we have located that log file, and let's take a look at what is going on when this happened. So I'm going to specifically search for the exception message that I caught. Going back to the Java code, let's search for this string. It looks like we hit some exceptions while processing the data from the input. So the exception is a null pointer exception, which means that some of the data that is coming from the source file is not consistent with what we were expecting. So this allows us to narrow down the root cause to the source data, and then we can go and figure out what is happening in the source. So this completes the demo. If you have any feedback, feel free to reach us out on supportvideos@informatica.com or reach us on Twitter at InfoSupport. Thank you.